The morning air in a small Ohio town was cool and quiet as Jake Miller slowed his Harley near the elementary school. The rumble of the engine faded as he parked farther down the street, not wanting to draw attention. Jake wasn't the kind of man people expected at a school. Broad shoulders, leather jacket worn thin with miles, beard flecked with gray, but today his hands trembled slightly. It was Parents' Day, and he'd taken time off work to surprise his daughter, Lily. Lily was 9 years old and autistic. She loved patterns, soft colors, and routine. Sudden changes made her anxious, but Jake hoped this surprise would be a good one. He imagined her smile when she saw him standing in the doorway, imagined her running to him the way she sometimes did at home when the world felt safe. Jake signed in at the front office, nodding politely as a secretary looked up, slightly startled by his appearance. He followed the hallway signs toward Lily's classroom, his boots echoing softly on the polished floor. Children's artwork lined the walls: bright suns, stick families, crooked houses. Jake slowed near the classroom door and peeked through the narrow window, wanting to see Lily before she saw him. What he saw made his chest tighten. Inside, the classroom buzzed with low conversation. Students sat in clusters, working on group assignments. Some laughed quietly, others argued over crayons and paper. At the front, a substitute teacher wrote instructions on the board, her back turned. Jake's eyes searched the room until he found Lily. She was sitting alone. Her desk was pushed slightly away from the others, not by design but by neglect. Lily's shoulders were hunched, her fingers twisting the corner of her notebook. She rocked gently, a movement Jake knew well, something she did when noise and confusion pressed in on her. Her eyes darted around the room, unsure, overwhelmed. No aide sat beside her. No classmate spoke to her. It was as if she existed on the edge of the room, unseen. Jake felt a surge of anger rise in his chest, hot and fast. For a moment, he imagined bursting through the door, demanding answers, letting everyone know they'd failed his daughter. His fists clenched, but then he saw Lily press her palms flat on the desk, taking shallow breaths the way her therapist had taught her. She was trying to cope, trying to be brave. That stopped him. Jake forced himself to breathe. This wasn't about his pride or his anger. This was about Lily. He watched as the teacher turned briefly, glanced in Lily's direction, then looked away, unaware of what was happening. It wasn't cruelty. It was worse. It was indifference. Jake stepped back from the window, heart heavy. He realized the shock wasn't seeing someone hurt his daughter, it was seeing how easily she could be forgotten. How a room full of adults and children could exist while Lily struggled silently. Standing in that hallway, Jake made a decision. He wouldn't explode. He wouldn't scare Lily or make things harder for her. He would do what he'd always done since the day she was diagnosed: protect her by understanding, by patience, and by refusing to let her fade into the background. And then, calmly, he turned and walked toward the counselor's office. Jake paused outside the counselor's office, letting his breathing slow before he knocked. Years on the road had taught him control, how a single bad reaction could make things worse. When the counselor, Mrs. Reynolds, looked up and saw him, her expression shifted from polite surprise to concern. "I'm Lily Miller's father," Jake said calmly. "She's in Ms. Carter's class today. I think she needs some support right now." Something in his voice, steady, controlled, made Mrs. Reynolds stand immediately. She listened as Jake explained what he'd seen. Lily sitting alone, overwhelmed, without accommodations. Jake didn't accuse. He described. And that made all the difference. Within minutes, they were walking back down the hallway together. Mrs. Reynolds entered the classroom first, speaking softly to the substitute teacher. The noise level dropped as students sensed a change. Jake remained near the door, his eyes fixed on Lily. Mrs. Reynolds knelt beside Lily's desk, speaking in a gentle, familiar tone. Lily didn't look up at first, but when she recognized the counselor's voice, her shoulders relaxed slightly. Mrs. Reynolds guided her to the quiet corner of the room, an area meant for moments like this, though clearly forgotten today. She brought over a weighted lap pad, noise-reducing headphones, and a small box of sensory items Lily loved. Jake felt a tight knot loosen in his chest. The substitute teacher approached, her face flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry," she said quietly. I didn't realize. I know, Jake replied, not unkindly. That's why I'm here. Only then did he step fully into the room. Lily looked up and froze, her eyes widening. For a second, Jake worried the surprise might be too much. Then her face broke into a smile, small, but real. She stood and walked straight to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Jake knelt down, holding her carefully. Hey, kiddo, he whispered. I'm right here. Lily pressed her forehead against his jacket, grounding herself. The classroom faded away. Students watched silently, some curious, some thoughtful. For perhaps the first time, Lily wasn't invisible. After a few minutes, Mrs. Reynolds asked if Lily would like to stay or visit the sensory room. Lily glanced at her father, then nodded toward the door. Jake squeezed her hand and walked with her, past the stairs, past the whispers, without shame. Later, in the principal's office, Jake spoke again, calm but firm. He talked about training, consistency, and how children like Lily didn't need special treatment, just understanding. The principal listened closely, taking notes, promising changes. Jake didn't ask for apologies. He asked for action. When the meeting ended, Jake and Lily sat outside on a bench. Lily traced circles on his glove with her finger, a habit that meant she felt safe. Did I do okay today? She asked softly. Jake swallowed. You did amazing, he said. You always do. As they left the school, Jake realized something important. Strength wasn't about being the loudest person in the room. It was about knowing when to stand back, when to step in, and how to make sure your child is seen, not just today, but every day that. Change didn't happen all at once, but it stayed. That was what surprised Jake the most. A month passed, then another. Lily's mornings became calmer. She no longer clutched her backpack like a shield when Jake dropped her off. Instead, she walked in with measured steps, schedule card already in hand. Some days were still hard. Noise, sudden changes, unfamiliar faces, but now there were people who noticed before things fell apart. One afternoon, Jake received a call from the school. His heart tightened out of habit, but the voice on the line was warm. It was Lily's teacher. I just wanted you to know, she said. Lily spoke in class today. During group time, Jake had to sit down. Apparently, the class had been working on a simple project about favorite places. Lily had quietly raised her hand and said one sentence, clear, steady, rehearsed in her mind a dozen times before leaving her lips. She talked about the garage at home, about the smell of oil and leather, about sitting on a stool and watching her dad work on his bike because it made her feel calm. The room had gone silent, not awkward, not judgmental, just attentive. That evening, Jake told Lily what her teacher had said. Lily's cheeks flushed, and she hid her face behind a pillow. I almost didn't talk, she admitted. But I remembered what you said. About being different strong. Jake smiled. Looks like the class learned something today too. The school decided to hold a small awareness day, not a big assembly, just classroom conversations about how people think and feel differently. Mrs. Reynolds invited Jake to speak to a group of teachers, not as an expert, but as a parent. Jake stood in front of them, hands in his pockets, uncomfortable with the attention. I'm not here to tell you how to do your jobs, he said honestly. I just want you to remember that silence doesn't mean nothing's happening. Sometimes it means everything is happening inside. The room stayed quiet long after he finished. One rainy afternoon, Lily had a setback. A fire drill, unplanned, loud, sudden. Jake was called again. This time, when he arrived, Lily was already in the sensory room, wrapped in a weighted blanket, breathing slowly. Mrs. Reynolds sat nearby. She did great, the counselor said. She asked for help. Jake knelt beside Lily. She didn't cry. She didn't shut down. She just reached for his sleeve. Too loud, she said. I know, Jake replied. But you handled it. On the ride home, rain tapping against the helmet, Jake realized progress wasn't about erasing fear. It was about learning how to move through it. That night, Lily taped a new drawing to the garage wall. It showed a motorcycle, a small girl, and a school building with open doors. Jake stared at it for a long time. He understood now that protecting his daughter didn't always mean standing in front of her. Sometimes it meant standing beside her. Sometimes it meant standing back and trusting the world, just enough to learn. And for the first time, Jake believed that Lily's world was getting bigger, not louder. Spring arrived quietly, the way Lily liked it. Not all at once, not loud or sudden, just small signs of change. Softer mornings, longer evenings, fewer knots in Jake's stomach when the school number flashed on his phone. One Friday, Lily came home with a folded paper clutched in her hand. She didn't say anything at first. She just placed it on the kitchen table and watched Jake carefully, studying his reaction the way she always did. Jake unfolded it. It was a simple note from the school. Field day is next week. Parents are welcome. Jake looked up. Do you want me to come? Lily hesitated. Field day meant noise, movement, whistles, shouting. Things that used to overwhelm her completely. But then she nodded. If we make a plan. Jake smiled. We'll make the best plan. On field day morning, Jake arrived early. Not on his bike this time. He didn't want to draw attention. He wore a plain jacket, but Lily still knew he was there. She spotted him immediately and walked over, headphones around her neck, schedule card clipped to her shirt. The playground buzzed with energy. Kids ran, laughed, lined up for games. Teachers moved between stations, checking lists. Mrs. Reynolds gave Jake a reassuring nod. Lily didn't join everything. She skipped the loudest games. She sat out when she needed to. And when she did participate, it was on her terms. A beanbag toss, a short relay, small victories that felt enormous. At one point, a boy from her class walked over and asked, "Do you want to be on my team?" Lily froze. Jake felt his instinct rise, step in, protect, answer for her. But he remembered what he'd learned. He stayed still. Lily took a breath. Okay, she said, just one word, enough. As the day ended, Lily walked back to Jake, tired but calm. She leaned against him, not from overload, but from contentment. I stayed, she said quietly. The whole time. Jake's voice caught. Yeah, you did. That evening, they returned to the garage. The place that had become Lily's favorite story, her safe space. Jake worked on his bike while Lily sat nearby, drawing again. This time, the picture was different. It showed Lily standing between two worlds, the school on one side, the motorcycle on the other. And in the middle, she stood tall, smiling. Jake taped the drawing next to the others. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be smooth. There would be new teachers, new challenges, new days that felt too heavy. But there would also be plans, words, hands reaching out instead of looking away. Later, as Jake tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at him. Dad, yeah, thank you for seeing me. Jake swallowed hard. Always. As he turned off the light, Jake understood the real shock from that first day at the classroom window. It wasn't just what he saw, it was what he refused to accept. And because of that refusal, his daughter wasn't invisible anymore. She was seen, she was heard, and she was exactly who she was meant to be.